We all use it, we hear about it constantly, but have you ever stopped to wonder what really gives the US dollar its incredible power? For a long time, the answer was pretty simple: gold. But that's not the case anymore, not even close. So how does a currency with, well, nothing tangible behind it manage to run the entire global economy? That's the real mystery we're diving into.
Right. This is the core puzzle we're going to piece together. If you can't just walk into a bank and trade your dollars for a chunk of gold anymore, what actually gives them their value? What's the foundation of the world's most important currency? Well, the answer is a wild story of secret deals, incredibly high-stakes gambles, and just raw economic power.
For decades, this system was crystal clear. The dollar was as good as gold, and it was this reliable anchor for the whole world economy. But then, that entire world order was completely dismantled, almost overnight. It all happened after a secret meeting that led to a shocking Sunday night announcement. And let me tell you, it was a moment that changed modern finance forever. Okay, so it all kicks off with our first major event, the moment the United States decided to just unilaterally slam the gold window shut. Now, this didn't just come out of nowhere. After World War II, a system called Bretton Woods pegged the dollar to gold, and then every other currency was pegged to the dollar. But by the 1960s, a ton of U.S. spending was draining its gold reserves, and other countries were starting to get, well, pretty nervous. The final straw came when Britain basically asked for a guarantee on its dollar holdings. This forced President Nixon into a secret weekend meeting at Camp David, which ended with a bombshell TV address on August 15, 1971. What Nixon announced, known as the Nixon Shock, was a three-pronged attack. First, and this is the big one, he completely severed the dollar's link to gold, just like that. Done. Second, he imposed a 90-day freeze on all wages and prices to try and fight inflation at home. And third, he slapped a 10% tax on imports to force other countries to raise the value of their own currencies. It was a complete teardown of the old financial system. So, what this action did, and this is the crucial point, is it turned the dollar into what's called a fiat currency. That's just a fancy way of saying it's not backed by a physical thing anymore. Its value now comes from the full faith and, frankly, the power of the government that issues it. It's backed by trust in the United States itself. But look, trust and power alone were not going to be enough. The U.S. needed a new way to create global demand for its now free-floating currency. And this leads us to the next chapter, the incredibly clever and pretty controversial petrodollar deal. This was the multi-trillion-dollar question that U.S. policymakers were facing. I mean, think about it. With gold out of the picture, why should Germany or Japan or anyone else bother holding on to dollars? The U.S. needed a new anchor, something everyone needed, and they found one in the most important commodity on Earth. So the whole system pivoted. The world went from redeeming dollars for gold to needing dollars to buy oil. It was an absolute masterstroke of economic strategy. So how did they pull this off? Well, in 1974, the U.S. struck a quiet deal with Saudi Arabia, and the arrangement was brilliant in its simplicity. 1. Saudi Arabia would price all of its oil sales only in U.S. dollars. 2. It would then invest its extra profits back into U.S. debt. And 3. In return, the United States would provide the kingdom with military protection and weapons. See that? It was a perfect self-reinforcing loop. And here's the magic trick. This deal created a massive, artificial, and permanent global demand for U.S. dollars. Suddenly, it didn't matter if you were France or Japan or Brazil. If your country needed to buy oil, and let's face it, every country did, you first had to get your hands on U.S. dollars. The dollar was now, for all intents and purposes, backed by oil. But this new system, well, it wasn't perfect. It actually helped unleash a whole new crisis: runaway inflation. And this inflation threatened to destroy the dollar's credibility all over again, which led to something we now call the Volcker Shock. By 1980, the situation was getting desperate. Just look at that number. Inflation in the United States was rocketing towards a staggering 15%. Can you even imagine that? The value of the dollar was just collapsing, and global confidence was evaporating with it. Things got so bad that the U.S. government had to do something pretty much unthinkable. They had to issue government debt, these were called Carter bonds, not in their own currency, but in Swiss francs. It was a deeply humiliating admission that the world was seriously losing faith in the dollar.
So in 1979, a new Federal Reserve chairman named Paul Volcker decided it was time for some radical surgery on the economy. He jacked up interest rates to an unprecedented 20%. I mean, just imagine a 20% interest rate. It was incredibly painful medicine, but it was designed to, in his words, break the back of inflation, no matter what it cost American workers and businesses. Now, the cost was a deep, painful recession, but the shock therapy absolutely worked. In just 3 years, inflation plunged from over 13% all the way down to just over 3%. It was a brutal, but honestly a stunningly effective victory for the dollar. But here's the thing. This victory created an entirely new set of challenges, and it revealed a key feature of how this modern dollar system works, its new topsy-turvy reality. Talk about whiplash. In 1980, the problem was a dollar that was way too weak, with capital fleeing the country. But by 1985, thanks to Volcker's sky-high interest rates, the exact opposite happened. The dollar was now incredibly strong as global capital flooded into the U.S. But this new strength was absolutely crushing American manufacturers. So, once again, the world's economic leaders had to step in. In 1985, the Big Five nations, the US, the UK, France, West Germany, and Japan, all met at the Plaza Hotel in New York. And their goal? The exact opposite of what Volcker did. They needed to team up to deliberately weaken the now too powerful US dollar. And the Plaza Accord worked. The dollar came down. But here is the crucial takeaway about how this whole system functions. To weaken the dollar, other countries had to strengthen their currencies. A lot of that burden fell on Japan. The Japanese yen soared, which forced their central bank to slash interest rates, which in turn fueled a massive asset bubble that famously burst, leading to Japan's lost decade of economic stagnation. You see what happened? The US had successfully exported its problem. So when you look back, from severing the link to gold to creating the petrodollar to orchestrating these huge global currency realignments, the dollar's dominance has been kept alive through a series of brilliant and often pretty brutal strategic shifts. It has survived by rewriting the rules of the game and shifting the burden of fixing things onto other countries. Which leaves us with the final and most critical question of all: can a model like that really last forever?